Hey boys and girls, it's Miko here. I quickly realized that with the connections now available with the XFX3 and the XFX2, I can actually make this preset which allows me to have one of the scenes be the XFX3 amp modeling, and then the second scene is actually the XFX2 amp modeling, and this way I can really compare these sounds and the amp modeling side by side super quickly. So for example, I'll just play some E riffing here for you guys so you can see what I mean. So here when I press down, which means that I switch to scene 2, you're now hearing the XFX3 with scene 1, but you're hearing the XFX2 with the scene 2. It's actually a cool preset and I can share it with you guys if you guys are interested. Essentially this is your normal line in, which is going to out 3 that goes into the XFX2 here, and then the out 3 or in 3 more like so comes in from here and goes to the same cab block. So I'm only using the amp block here in the XFX2. There's nothing else here except for the amp block. So the cabinet modeling is the same here, and I actually found one of my own IRs that's probably one of my favorite Marshall IRs that's in here. So the PR7557A1 ML, as in my name, ML. That's what I'm using for the cab modeling here. And after that, there's nothing going on. It's just that one out, which is what you're hearing. So when I change the scenes, what's happening is right now you're in scene 2, so amp 1 is bypassed and the volume block is here just to mute the signal here. So when I switch to scene 1, what happens is, let's see if it works from here. Yeah. I have the same volume block here muting the signal out. That would be coming out of this one, and then I have the volume block that's doing nothing, just letting the signal through to the amp block of the XFX3. So without further ado, let's go into comparing these. So right now what you're hearing is actually oh man, still getting used to this a little bit, the Brit Silver, and same thing here on the XFX2, the Brit Silver. So what you're hearing is the Brit Silver through that one PR75, which is actually a pre-roll, really nice cabinet, the best cabinet for Marshall fans, you know, the one that everyone's been using and wants to have. So that cabinet, and I shot some IRs of it that are pretty awesome, and now you have them stuck in the XFX3. But that's what you're hearing. So with the XFX3 amp modeling, it sounds like this. And with the 2, so once again they sound pretty similar, but right now that I have them side by side, I can definitely feel the difference here. Actually the problems come from when I try to volume balance these two. It seems impossible because they're not the same balance EQ wise. You can actually hear it in the low end, and they're the same settings, so everything is set at noon. Should be. So right now it almost feels like the XFX2 is louder, but when I look at the spectrum, it's actually not. It's actually lower in volume. So what happens there is that it kind of the XFX2 the low end is not so precise. So if I really try and emphasize that so you guys can hear it a little bit better. And comparing that to the XFX3, it's a lot tighter, you know. So even in the first video that I shot, I told you guys that I felt like the XFX3 was kind of tighter, and I think it might be. I'm not sure where it comes from. It's many people have been saying that it's brighter, so that kind of goes hand in hand with the tightness thing. If it's brighter, it should be a little bit tighter. But you know, it's probably something you can tweak with the XFX2 and get really close. I mean, they're super close right now anyways. But what I really want to do here is start to mess around with the EQ settings and see if there are differences there, because in the last comparison that I made, everything was just set to noon. So if I go to the amp block here and tweak around a little bit, for example, let's have the bass around 3, mids at 6, treble 6.5, and maybe do something with the presence also. Presence? Yeah, sorry about that. Still not English. So let's do the same thing here in the other block. So in the XFX2, so let's set the bass at 3, mids at 6.6, and treble at 6.5, and then presence 6.5. So right now, just checking the master volume here. Both are here. It's at 4, and here it's at 4. So right now we should have the same settings on both. So let's hear if there's a difference. So I'm not sure if you can hear the difference, but I think I feel the difference. You might actually be able to hear it, but for me, the XFX2, kind of the low end, and maybe even the ultra high end, sounds a little bit like less, kind of like lower quality. I hate to use that term because obviously people expect to hear that, but you know, I don't get that right pick attack when I palm mute, and then the low end is flubbier, whereas with the XFX3 I feel like it's a really kind of a snappy attack, and then no flub at all in the low end. You can even hear it when I do it here with the same palm muting. So you do hear differences there. I feel like the difference is bigger when using an amp with power amp distortion. Like if you use some high gain amps like Mesa or Diesel or something like that. Depends on the Diesel obviously, but most of them are kind of designed so that the master volume is just a volume and the drive comes from the preamp. That's where I find like the differences are kind of smaller, but you know, when using a Marshall based amp like this, you can hear kind of the master volume. I think that's where the modeling difference is the biggest right now. I think we can try a different amp now. Let's see what we have here. Actually, we have a new Friedman here. I'm not sure if it's gonna be on the XFX2, but there's an HBE 2018. I'm not sure if there's a newer firmware for the XFX2. Let's check which one I have. I'm using Quantum 9, so it might actually be also available for the XFX2. I just don't know. But anyways, I did the Friedman last time, so let's not go there. I really want to use something that's using a lot of power amp distortion, so obviously thinking of a Plexi. So let's use this one, the 1987 X Treble. I actually like this amp a lot, and I have my favorite settings for this as well. But let's reset the plug here. And my settings are pretty crazy for this one, but that's how it's, that's how it sounds correct. So I think I can, well, the treble can be like 8.5, and then I think I can have all of the mids in. That should be pretty good. The presence, well, let's leave it at noon right now. But the same settings, let's try it on the XFX2 then. Want to be precise with these settings, so there's nothing else that's possibly ruining this comparison. So master at full, output volume, I suppose it's the same because I'm not sure. Yep, should be the same sound right now. So the XFX3, yeah, right now you can definitely hear more the difference with the power amp modeling up. You get a little bit more noise here, but I think that might be because I have the extra loop going on here. Don't worry about that, but even then the low end is very different. I hate to use the term plastic, but in comparison it kind of does sound like that. Like solid state, that's a better word, not plastic, but kind of sounds more like a solid state amp. And compared to right now, there's just way too much gain for this tone to be usable, so let's lower the gain to like 6, so we can hear there's difference in the tone when it's more usable. That's extreme settings, Okay, so this is that's more of a normal rock tone you would use with this amp actually. So it's kind of a medium drive. Just to be sure, this is the XFX3 now. XFX2. even here, I think the differences are bigger once again, kind of like what I thought. So that the power amp modeling is kind of where you'll hear the differences already. I'm not sure what's been done there, but with the power amp modeling on the XFX3, it just sounds more clear, more analog, while it sounds kind of more like a solid state amp on the XFX2, but you know, it still sounds 100% real on the XFX2. But you know, this is kind of where I started finding differences in the amp modeling once I started comparing these two units together. So even here, they actually sound quite different. Just have a listen. It's almost like the brightness thing that people are saying. On the XFX2, I feel like I'm hearing more of the lower strings that I'm playing, and with the XFX3, it's more emphasizing more of those higher strings. And on the XFX2, it's more of the lower strings. So let's jump to the next amp sim. So the next thing I want to try is a clean tone. So if we use the deluxe tweed, and actually I don't want to change the IR. It sounds pretty good. Let's hope that it sounds pretty good like this. So let's reset the block here once again in deluxe tweed. Okay, so right now we have the deluxe tweed with the same default settings. Let's use the neck pickup on my guitar. Okay, that's the XFX3. It's weird. It feels very different. I'm not sure if it sounds very different, but it feels very different. I think with this Fender amp, the XFX2 is actually brighter than the XFX3. That's weird. But, you know, kind of that small distortion that you get from a Fender, it's smoother on the XFX3. And it's kind of mushier on the XFX2. Once again, both sound really good, but you know, I'm trying to find the differences here. So with this Fender amp, I feel like the XFX3 is smoother, kind of, it's smoother and kind of, it's almost like there's some kind of compression, like a multiband compression that just makes it smoother all around with all the amps. Interesting. Yeah, obviously I prefer the XFX3 in that sense. It sounds more natural, but once again, they're really close. You can definitely make the XFX2 sound better than that. Just that the XFX3 can sound better straight out of the box without putting any extra effort into it. I think we have time for one more amp sim. So let's jump into something very different. Actually not sure if we should. Let's do the recto comparison. Okay, so now it's a recto modern metal kind of thing. So that's the XFX3 version. XFX2. Previously I said that with higher gain amps like the Mesa you will not hear the difference that much, but I actually do think that with this the drive is actually different. I'll try and palm mute with just one hand so you can hear the difference. So the XFX3 is, in my opinion, tighter. And the drive is, it kind of sustains less, while on the XFX2 it's kind of longer. And actually also the XFX2 is a little bit louder, but I'll try and make that more even in the video. Three. It actually sounds better. When I'm playing the low E with another note, that's where I hear the difference. On the XFX3 I feel like the higher strings kind of take over, while on the XFX2 the lower string kind of takes over. Have a listen. I I think that's like super clear. I'll do it again. So on the XFX2, I'm playing a high note, or actually kind of a medium note, and then a low note. I can definitely hear more of the low note. But on the XFX3, I kind of hear more that medium note. So kind of, I'm not sure which one is better or more realistic or anything like that. But I would say that with more mids, you always get into kind of tighter and better sound in the mix. Let's try like a super high note and a super low note and try the same thing. I'm out of tune. That's interesting. On the XFX3, I can hear that I'm out of tune better. But on the XFX2, it kind of doesn't even seem like I'm out of tune. So that's crazy. I feel like on the XFX2, the super highs and the super lows are balanced, so they kind of ring out equally long. But on the XFX3, the low end takes over. So if I would kind of draw an EQ curve, the XFX3 would have medium lows, much mids, less highs. And on the XFX2, you would have lots of lows, not so much mids, and much highs. You know? Kind of like the XFX2 is maybe a little bit more scooped, while the XFX3 is more of a mid, or has more mids in comparison, but then doesn't have as much highs as the XFX2. So I would say that the XFX3 has a little bit more mids, and the XFX2 is a little bit more scooped, which leads to it sounding a little bit more bass heavy at times. At least in this comparison right now, it seems that way. Okay, I think this is enough geekery. I'll make more videos like this, but this is pretty cool. And if you like these videos, please subscribe. It's fun making these, and if you want me to do something similar like this, I'd love to do it. So just let me know what you want to see, and I'll do it. Okay, subscribe, and thank you.